We start with another gruesome day on Wall Street. Another quadruple-digit loss for the Dow, which is on pace to shed 3,000 points in 2 days. The reason, once again, is President Trump's global trade war. This morning, China became the first country to retaliate against the United States, slapping a 34% tariff on American-made goods. And yet, there was also some good news for the U.S. economy this morning, a much stronger than expected jobs report. The economy added 228,000 new jobs in March. CNN's Vanessa Yurkevich is at the New York Stock Exchange. Vanessa, let's start with the chairman of the Fed. What did he say today, and how does that play into the overall economic picture?
Yeah, Dana, and just as he's been speaking, we've seen the NASDAQ and the S&P drop more than 4%. The Fed chair, Jerome Powell, saying today that the tariffs were much more aggressive than they anticipated, that inflation is likely to rise and could linger longer, and we're headed for an economic slowdown. Listen to what he said just moments ago.
Looking ahead, higher tariffs will be working their way through our economy and are likely to raise inflation in coming quarters. While uncertainty remains elevated, it is now becoming clear that tariff increases will be significantly larger than expected. And the same is likely to be true of the economic effects, which will include higher inflation and slower growth. The size and duration of these effects remains uncertain.
Now, reporters in the room also asked Jerome Powell whether he believes that the economy is headed for a recession. He would not answer that, but we know J.P. Morgan revised their recession outlook up from 40% before President Trump announced these tariffs on April 2nd to 60%. And you can see just what the stock market has done over time since President Trump took office in January. Just a steep decline on the NASDAQ, the S&P, and on the Dow. Just a precipitous decline, especially in this last week, as investors are craving some sort of uncertainty. Dana, doesn't look like they're getting that right now.
Yeah, they definitely do want certainty. I mean, if you just look at that graph that we had up next to you, Vanessa, that is very, very telling. I do want to ask you about those job numbers. They are better than expected. How does that sort of play into the tariff news? And are they connected at all?
It is certainly a signal that the labor market is solid heading into the trade war. Remember, this is backwards looking. We're looking at March numbers. There was an increase in hiring, a big pickup. We thought it was going to be around 130,000. It's at 228,000 jobs added. The unemployment rate ticking up just slightly to 4.2%. But investors I've spoken to say that this is really ancient news at this point. They're looking forward to the trade war. They don't feel like this trade war has been captured in that March report at all. But what it does signal is that the labor market is strong and could sort of soften the blow of a recession if that's coming. One investor told me that if we back out of this trade war now, we are likely to avoid a recession because of this stronger report. But of course, as I said, that investors are really looking for some sense of certainty right now, and a lot of what they're getting is uncertainty around this trade war, especially as we're now hearing retaliatory measures from countries like China.
With stocks plummeting and markets in turmoil, President Trump is sounding defiant, insisting his sweeping tariffs are going very well. He's promising that his policies, quote, will never change. Not sure that Wall Street is understanding that as a positive because we have been showing what is going on there. Joining me now with a response to all of this from Capitol Hill is the Senate Democratic leader, Chuck Schumer. Senator Schumer, thank you so much for being here. We are seeing a historic rout on Wall Street. The Fed chair just warned that these tariffs could drive inflation back up, hurt growth. How worried are you that all of this could push the U.S. economy into a recession?
I'm very worried about it, Dana. This is one of the most disastrous and poorly thought out policies that the Trump administration has done thus far, and that's saying a lot. First, the disaster to American families is dramatic. It's estimated the average family, it'll cost them $5,000 more a year, and that means that's the price of everything, whether it's groceries or drugs or food or clothing or cars or gas or building a home, goes way up. And what does that mean? there's less money for the economy, and that's what makes a recession it was much more likely than it was before Trump did this. Now the estimates are as high as 30–40% by the financial institutions. Second, what it does is it makes everybody just worry about spending money. Businesses like certainty. And when there's no certainty, because Donald Trump has been so erratic, businesses hold back on spending, on training, on hiring people. Consumers say, hey, I'm not going to be able to afford that one trip we've been saving for to visit grandma or buy the new car. And it's so poorly done. Do you know, Dana? This policy taxes penguins but not Putin, because the herd and McDonald Islands are in the tax. All they have is penguins.
Yeah.
He leaves Putin alone. It's crazy. It's poorly thought out, but most of all, it's a disaster. So one more point. Why is he doing this? To give tax breaks to his billionaire friends. They are all in that billionaire bubble. They just talk to themselves, and they don't know how badly they're hurting average American families.
Well, let me sort of ask a follow-up on that, because what Donald Trump has argued for decades is that it's about fairness, and it's about helping American manufacturing, in particular, helping blue-collar jobs and workers and American businesses in the U.S. This is what he says. And he actually has support right now in this current climate and this current policy from the UAW. They called his auto tariffs, quote, return to policies that prioritize workers who build this country rather than the greed of ruthless corporations. The UAW obviously is historically a key Democratic constituency. Are they wrong here?
No, look, there are certain tariffs that pinpointed, careful, aimed at things that other countries are doing badly at us make sense. This is not that. This is across the board, 10% on everything in addition to what other tariffs he's put on.
But what about the auto
and so it
tariffs
affects
in
everything.
particular?
Well, look, you have to look at it in the whole context of things. When there's such chaos in America, I think fewer Americans are going to buy cars, American cars or otherwise, because it's so chaotically done. So I think it hurts everybody.
So this big union organization, UAW, on this, they don't have it right?
Look, I respect them, but the tariffs, if they wanted to do something about autos, should have been much more pinpointed and isolated than this massive assault on American families, all to help the billionaires. That's why he's using this tariff money to further cut taxes on billionaires, and that's what we're talking about on the floor of the Senate right now.
The veteran Republican Senator Chuck Grassley and Democratic Senator Maria Cantwell, they have introduced a bill, bipartisan bill, to require congressional approval for any new tariffs. And I'm sure you saw that Grassley said it's necessary to reassert Congress's constitutional role and ensure Congress has a voice in trade policy. Is that going to pass?
Look, it has good bipartisan support. I think it's a very good bill. It's the first time we have seen some Republicans buck Donald Trump. They've all too often gone along with him, even when they know his policies are dead wrong. So I welcome it, and I hope it could pass. It's a bipartisan bill, and it shows you how bad these tariffs are when even Republicans who have been so afraid to break with Trump, some of the leading Republicans are, and they deserve some credit for that on this bill.